Today we have the very special privilege of having on the program Maria Khoury. Maria is the author of Christina Goes to the Holy Land, part of 10 books in the Christina book series, which is now published in many languages: Albanian, Romanian, German, and even Spanish. She hopes to have it published in Greek as well. She lives in Taibe in West Bank, Palestine, but is currently in Athens due to the situation that has developed in that part of the world. Maria, nice to see you. Good to hear your voice again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Father Chris.
You recently fled Palestine to Athens following the escalation in violence that began earlier this month. Is that correct?
That's correct, Father Chris.
All right. Can you tell us in your own words what you've experienced? I can't even imagine in the past several weeks.
Well, we've had a very intense year in general, as being, I live on the other side of the wall, a half hour outside of Jerusalem. So for 75 years, it's been very bad on the ground for most people. I have been there since the early 90s, but it intensified, especially when there were extra attacks between Israel and between Hamas. Hamas has a military wing that constantly seeks freedom and resilience and wants to free Palestine. And for 75 years, there is no freedom for Palestine. And this is a continued cycle of violence, seeking freedom and seeking justice.
And some people you can help us out a little bit here, since you are living in that part of the world. Hamas and the Palestinian people are not necessarily one and the same, because some people would say, well, the attack that happened by Hamas is all of the Palestinian people. I don't believe that's true.
Well, Father Chris, maybe instead of talking about all these technical things, maybe we can talk about where I live, how it is. I don't agree with what Hamas does. I don't like their tactics, but we live on the ground with them. And actually, this is very complex to explain to you, but in order for the mayor in Bethlehem to be the mayor in Bethlehem, and in order the mayor in Ramallah to be the mayor in Ramallah, which is a requirement for them to be Christian, they actually have to make coalition with the Hamas political group, because a lot of people are Hamas. There was no Hamas, by the way, in 1987, before my son was born. There's no Hamas. But Israel wants to break the word on the ground, on the street, so people don't support Arafat. So Arafat will not be the iconic image for Palestinian people. So they helped to develop this small group to go against Arafat. And so this small group, Hamas, the Islamic movement, were only 5 people, and the 5 became 50, and the 50 became 500, and the 500 became 5,000 and 50,000, and now they're in the millions. So there was no Hamas, but with the help of Israel, we have Hamas.
Can you give us, our viewers, a little more background on the actual Christian community there?
So talking about the Christian community here, we were at one point, before the creation of Israel, there were close to 18% Christians in all of the Holy Land. In Jerusalem itself, there were over 5,000 Greeks, because they were there with people that were serving the church, monks, priests. But throughout, one country's great joy to create Israel in 1948 is the destruction of another country and the catastrophe of another country. So throughout the years and the wars and the occupation, no freedom in the area, most of the people went abroad to America, to Great Britain, everywhere, to put food on the table for their children. Currently, we're hardly 1% Christian in the Holy Land, less than 1% Christian. Most people are born Orthodox Christian, but throughout the ages, because other churches are very good in terms of giving help to people to have homes, to have jobs, to have education, to help support for tuition for college, most of our churches are emptying out, and they go to churches that, would help them. But most people are born Orthodox Christian. They trace their roots to the time of Christ. In Gaza, the Saint Porphyrius church, and also, in Jericho, the Saint Gerasimos church, the monastery, they're some of the oldest churches in the world. Our church where I live in Taibe, which is biblical Ephraim, it's 1,600 years of age. It was built the same time Saint Helen asked for the church to be built in Jerusalem, the churches in Jerusalem, and the church in Bethlehem, because everywhere that Helen went that told her something important happened in Jesus' life, she wanted to document the footsteps of Christ, so she asked for churches to be built. And maybe she never saw our church finished in Taibe, but we know that it was Constantine who gave permission for the first churches to be called after St. George. So our church in Taibe is named after St. George, Greek Orthodox Church, and my husband's grandfather was the parish priest there at St.
You mentioned briefly St. Porphyrius Church. We hear through the media that it was damaged, maybe even destroyed last week. Can you tell us a little more about what you know about that church, about maybe how the community is responding? It was my understanding that the St. Porphyrius Church was a place where people went for refuge, and the church was protecting them.
After we had this awful, tragic, violent attack on Israelis, which of course Israeli Jewish people have a right to defend themselves and they have a right to be secured. But I wish that right and that security and that justice could be also for Palestine. But following this tragic violence and attack and bloodshed that happened at the borders with the Hamas attack on inside Israel, Israel came back, and of course they will crush Hamas, and they're going to crush everyone else that's in their way. And on Wednesday evening, unfortunately, there was an attack on the building that's right next to the church, which is the church hall and the church offices. And many people have gone from the north to the south, because that's what Israel said, to be safe, leave the north. Over 1 million people are in the street and they're homeless because they left to be safe, but then they got bombed on
where do they go? Where do they go?
Bombed in the south, and they went in the streets. So the people that are Christian went to the church to be safe. And this church is in the area called El Zatoun area. Well, anyway, I could not believe the church was bombed, and I immediately started texting everyone I know when my son told me the news, because he gets everything from Facebook. And I said, no, this is fake news. This is not real news. But unfortunately, it was true. 18 people that brutally got under the rubble, they were hurt. I mean, through our Taibe families, we know 15 of them. My dentist in Taibe, not only his home, the people that survived had their homes demolished, so they have no homes. And 15 out of the 18 people are relatives of our family in Taibe.
A real tragedy, and millions of people now living with no housing, no food, no fuel. It's very, very difficult. It's very difficult.
About 500 people, 400, 500, I don't know the exact number, they had gone to the church for refuge, Father Chris. And I know that Archbishop Alexios was inside the church and he was praying the Vesper service, and there were less than 100 people inside the church, and they were actually not hurt. The people that were in the church hall building that was hit were the people that many injuries, and the 18 that lost their lives. All Orthodox Christian, Palestinian ethnicity people that are part of the less than 1,000. I would say now there's about 1,000 people, maybe 1,500 at the most. But when I first went to the Holy Land, I went when my husband started the Taybeh Beer. We make beer for a living, the Taybeh Beer. In 1994, the church community there was over 3,000 people. But throughout the years of the wars and the terrible occupation, I mean, people have to go to a place that they can put food on the table. It's very difficult to get out of Gaza. So once they come from Gaza into the West Bank, sometimes they just never go back to Gaza.
Let's talk a minute. I know your husband. I know Daoud. He remains in Palestine. Let me ask you a personal question, if you feel you can share it. What are you hearing from him? How is he? What is the situation briefly there now?
Well, thank God that everyone in Taibe is okay. My family is okay. My husband Daoud, of course, refused to leave. I just absolutely had to go because I had my cousins and friends calling me 5 times a day to leave. And it was a very difficult decision to leave. Actually, my mind is in pieces now and my heart is in pieces because I, maybe should have stayed next to my husband. I'm not sure why I ran away and came to Athens. But yes, my husband didn't want to leave because we're in the olive season as well. And we had a terrible attack by Israeli settlers in the village of Taibe, where the local people from Taibe went to pick their olive trees. And we have a new wave of settlements now where like there's a shepherd that came and he confiscated the land, and he brought 30 of his settler friends that basically went to scare the local Taybeh people that went to pick their olives this Sunday, to the point where some families got scared and actually left. But the 2 families that refused to run away, they were just hit, with the back of this is my husband telling me what happened. He was on the other side of the town. But the settlers hit actually the young man that refused to leave, and they took like the 7-8 bags of olives that they had already picked. And so this is not something I'm used to having happen in Taibe. We usually have less settler attacks in Taibe, but this whole year, the West Bank has had so many settler attacks that you never hear about on your nightly news, unfortunately. But this is what we suffer there. People coming and confiscating the land. It's Israeli illegal settlers coming and confiscating Palestinian land to make Jewish homes for Jews only. And this is the new shepherd that's Israeli settler on Taibe land, where my husband even has a parcel, but you can't do anything about it. They come and they have the guns, the power, the money, and you can't access your land.
Well, clearly, it's a very, very sad and difficult situation. In my personal opinion, I believe that Israelis and Palestinians deserve to live in freedom. They deserve to live in a place where there is no fear, and they deserve in a place to live where they are not threatened. And for me, the most important weapon that I have as an Orthodox Christian and as a priest is our prayers. And I hope and pray that people who are listening to this, even not hearing this, but anyone in this situation, should be praying for all people there. One final question for you, Maria. Is there anything our viewers can do to make a positive impact on the humanitarian situation right now?
Father Chris, I think the viewers, I think we need to take action where we can encourage Israel to stop killing us, but talk to us, because if maybe justice and basic human rights for all people could possibly bring peace, not constant guns and worship. Because last night, actually, the 45 years that I know my husband, every day we're used to hearing people died, but 700 people died last night. That's like a huge big number. 700 in it's just outrageous. The people that continue to die. And I'm so sorry that actually I'm here in Greece and there's so many, the governments everywhere are just so pro-Israel. I'm so sorry. I can only ask people to please contact their officials so that they could possibly bring a ceasefire. The killing has to stop, and the hospitals can't operate. We have people in Gaza with their telephones trying to see the injured because there's no electricity. They need fuel just at the hospitals. It's just a bewildering, terrible humanitarian disaster in Gaza, Father Chris.
Well, Maria, thank you. May God bless you and your family and all the people in both Palestine and Israel. I pray that things will stop, the violence will cease, and that everyone can live in peace. Thank you, Maria. God bless you.